Okay, hello folks. Welcome back to our off-site learning. I hope you all had a great spring break, enjoyed, relaxed a bit. So when we finished up before spring break, we had actually wrapped up our chemistry unit. So that was unit 2. So we're going to move right on ahead now into unit 3, which is geology or the changing earth. Okay, so we're going to take a look now at how we use science to study the earth and how it has changed throughout its very long history. So for that, you will need, the notes for this unit. Looks like this. It's on the Google Classroom. And yeah, we're just going to jump right in. Okay, so our first topic in the kind of geology unit, I'm going to bring these back. I've been posting them for our offsite portion as well, but I'm going to start actually just showing them at the beginning so you can have them in your mind as you go, just to make sure that you've seen them. Okay, these are the big ideas for today. We're going to be looking a lot at the times involved with the history of the Earth. Okay, because that's what geology is. Geo means Earth. Ology kind of means the study of or looking at, right? Biology, bio, the study of life. Geology, geo, the study of Earth. Okay, so for today, topic 1, these are the big ideas I want you to have in the back of your mind as we go through. And then at the end, ask yourself, okay, do I have those down? Can I answer them? So how old is the Earth estimated to be? What are the 4 major eras in geologic time? What was the longest of those 4 eras? Okay, what event marked the beginning of the rapid evolution of complex life? What change in the Earth's atmosphere allowed for this event? Okay, and then what kind of life evolved that allowed for that change in the atmosphere? So you can see there's kind of a chain reaction at play there. Okay, so starting off on page 1 of the notes, and you'll see there the first thing is Earth's history, geologic time. And again, geo meaning Earth, right? So radiometric dating, which we're going to get to that at the end of the unit, that you're going to actually do some of your own radiometric dating. I mean, not with actual radioactive isotopes, but you're going to do the math that's involved with it, okay? Shows that the Earth basically formed about 4.54 billion years ago. That's a long time. That is 4, right? Just so you can see it written out, years. Okay, that's 4.54 billion years. Now, when did life show up? Life showed up roughly, due to our best estimates, the oldest kind of fossils we can find. Looks like they showed up for the first time roughly a billion years after it formed. So 3.5 billion years ago, right? So it formed 4.5 billion years ago. Life's been around for about 3.5 billion years. So we're dealing with huge time scales here. Okay, so we kind of have to order it based on these big chunks of time. Okay. Now, how do we do that? How do we decide where one era begins and the other one ends? Where one era ends and the next one begins, I should say. Okay, I'm just going to go down here, kind of skip to the end. So, how do we decide it? It's based on drastic changes in the fossil record, right? So, we notice as we go back in time through the fossils, we start to say, okay, things look really different for life at this time than they do for this time. So, it looks like something major happened, and we can even see evidence of those major changes. Okay, so essentially these different eras that we're going to look at, these 4 big ways that we chunk up the history of the Earth, they're largely just based on different forms of life. Okay, different eras are largely just based on different forms of life. So when we chunk these, the 4 that we're going to look at, the 4 eras, okay, there we can then split up eras into periods and epochs. Okay, however, in Science 20 we mostly just need to know the eras. Okay, the big ways of looking at it. So when we look at those 4 different eras, we're essentially looking at 4 different types of life that were popular at the time. Okay, so the Cenozoic, modern life, right? Modern, Ceno means modern, Zoic means life. So Ceno literally means new slash modern, okay, and Zoic means life. Okay, so you guessed it, this is the most recent one. We are actually living here now, right? You are here, okay? You are here. You're at the very end of it. So uh, this is often called, what is the kind of characteristic life that defines the Cenozoic era? Well, we often call it the age of mammals. Okay, so often it's called the age of mammals. So what makes the Cenozoic the Cenozoic? Where does the Mesozoic end and the Cenozoic begin? Well, it ends when mammals start being the big kids on the block, right? The ones that are kind of dominating the scene of life. So what are you? Do you know what you are? You're a mammal, right? So we are in this age, right? Mammals were not always doing so hot. And then it was in this Cenozoic age that began about 65 million years ago. Okay, so let's just mention you are here, right? We are in the Cenozoic era. So about 65 million years ago is when mammals really started to take over the Earth. Who did they take it over from? Well, you might know this one, right? The Mesozoic era, the era right before that. Meso means middle. Okay. Zoic again means life. So middle life, we're talking about the middle here, right? This is modern. This is the newest stuff. Middle life. Who did mammals take over from? The dinosaurs, right? So this is often called the age of reptiles because dinosaurs are reptiles now. They've kind of changed the definition of a reptile since then, but the name has stuck, the age of reptiles, right? This is where the dinosaurs were. Dinosaurs rule the earth, right? That's who we took over for. Okay. Notice you might have heard, when did dinosaurs go extinct? It was 65 million years ago, right? Hey, the Cenozoic started 65 million years ago. Sorry, the Mesozoic is about 185 million years long, right? That doesn't mean 185 million years ago. It means it was 185 million years long, from 250 million years ago to 65 million years ago. Okay, Paleozoic. That word paleo is going to come up a lot in this unit. You know what paleo means, right? Paleo, you might have heard like a paleo diet. What is a paleo diet? Well, it's eating like our ancestors would have eaten. It's old. That's what it means. It means old diet, eating like old humans would have eaten. So paleo means old, and zoic means, you guessed it, still means life. Okay. Now that era lasted about 340 million years. Okay. Paleozoic era is not as famous as the age of reptiles, where the dinosaurs ruled the earth. It's often called the age of marine life. So most life on earth during the Paleozoic, or at least for most of the Paleozoic, was actually in the ocean. At the beginning of the Paleozoic, there was nothing living on land. Land was not a nice place to be yet. Earth was still very hot, full of lava, right? Volcanoes. It was not a cool place to be. You would not want to be alive on the earth. But in the ocean, yeah, it was starting to get okay. You could live there a little bit, okay? So I'll just say very little life on land. Okay. Now pay attention to the number here. Look at this. We've talked about a couple hundred million, right? 65 million. Look at this last one, the Precambrian era. About 4 billion years. 4 billion years. Remember, how old is the Earth? It's 4.5 billion years old. So we're talking about almost 90% of Earth's entire history actually fits into this part right here, the Precambrian era. Okay, notice there's no Zoic in there. What did Zoic mean? Zoic meant life, right? So was there life in the Precambrian? Yes, because we said it appeared about 3 billion years ago. But that life was very, very boring. Okay, it was very, very simple life. There was not much to it. It was all single cellular, right? That just means it has one cell. Okay, and it was definitely all in the oceans, okay? Because again, Earth was not a nice place to be at the time. So Precambrian era, we're talking very simple life the entire time, like literally bacteria, simpler than bacteria, okay? Very simple life. And that's if there was life at all, because remember, for the first billion years of the Earth's history, there was no life. Now, here's where things get interesting. Notice how it's called the Precambrian? That's because something ended the Precambrian that was so important. Okay, we split Earth up into the Precambrian and the Postcambrian, if I'm being honest, right? We kind of split it up into before this happened and after this happened. That event is called the Precambrian ended with the Cambrian explosion. Okay, the Cambrian explosion. Now that sounds bad. You're thinking, oh, explosion. Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. Okay, what is it an explosion of? It's an explosion of life. Suddenly, in the grand scheme of things, remember we're talking about 4.5 billion years here. Suddenly, in the span of like a few million years, life just goes off the charts. We go from these simple things that are simpler than bacteria, right? A boring little bacteria. We get jellyfish, we get trilobites, we get all these complex organisms with more than one cell. Life really takes off with the Cambrian explosion. That's when we enter the Paleozoic era. okay, that's when we start saying, hey, there's actually enough life that it's worth calling it the early life stage, right? The old life stage, the Paleozoic stage. So it's important to know that the Precambrian ended with the Cambrian explosion. Now, what is the Cambrian explosion? Okay, it is sudden, rapid appearance of complex life. And it gets diverse really quick. We go from all these boring little archaea, they're called simpler than bacteria, and then suddenly we have huge variety of life, right? Going from the Precambrian into the Paleozoic is like going from porridge to an all-you-can-eat buffet with every single type of food you could imagine. That's the amount of difference we're talking about here between the Precambrian and after the Cambrian explosion. So the sudden rapid appearance of complex life, okay? What allowed this to happen? Why did the Cambrian explosion happen? Well, something evolved that had never been around before, or something evolved that could do something that had never been done before. Okay, what was that? It was caused by, so let me say this first. It was caused by rising oxygen levels. Because as you know, right, you need oxygen to live. All life needs oxygen to live, caused by rising oxygen levels. Okay, where did that oxygen come from? So, what's the cause of the cause? Well, for the first time ever, uh, organisms, cyanobacteria, they're called. Okay, essentially it's algae. They get most of the credit for you being here today and for everything alive, pretty much. Okay, organisms, cyanobacteria that could do photosynthesis. No one before this could do photosynthesis. Okay, and then suddenly cyanobacteria that could do photosynthesis evolved. So you might remember from Science 10, how do you do photosynthesis? You take sunlight, you take carbon dioxide, and you take water. And what do you make? You make sugar for you to eat, glucose. Okay, great. But what's the other thing? Oxygen. And so when bacteria started to evolve that could do this, they started to greatly increase the levels of oxygen in the atmosphere. That led to more complex life being able to be supported, right? Boom, takes off. Okay, now I want to show you something here. Okay, you're kind of probably thinking, well, if the life changes a lot at every era, as each era changes, is bad stuff happening? You'd be right to think that, okay? When one era ends and another begins, unfortunately, since life is changing so much, that usually requires a mass extinction, right? How did we take over for the dinosaurs? How did mammals take over? Well, an asteroid came and killed most of the dinosaurs, and the mammals were okay because they were still small little foraging things that could survive on lower levels of sunlight because the sun was getting blocked out by the asteroid, right? So every era basically ends with a mass extinction. So notice here, Cenozoic, 65 million years ago. Guess when that asteroid hit? 65 million years ago, right? Mass extinction. Okay, that one was an asteroid. Okay, now the dinosaurs, how did they take over? How did they take over from all the marine life? Well, again, there was a mass extinction. This one, they're actually not as sure about what caused it, but probably just had to do with rising temperatures, very warm temperatures, and low sea levels. Okay, so that's what they think. And then this one, it actually, for us organisms that use oxygen, this was great. But there actually kind of was a mass extinction here because up until this point, a lot of organisms didn't use oxygen to stay alive. They were actually called anaerobic. Okay, they were called anaerobic organisms. And so they didn't need oxygen to survive. So when this atmosphere got full of oxygen, they actually kind of died off. So we can think of it as, yes, it was an explosion of life, but in another way, it was kind of a leaving behind of the old type of life that didn't use oxygen. Okay, so there was kind of a mass extinction here. There was also a mass explosion of life, don't get me wrong, but that is kind of what ends them. So as each era ends, a whole bunch of stuff dies off and a new form of life kind of takes over. Now, this timeline, this geologic timeline that, by the way, is in your data booklet, okay? It's on page 4. I don't think I mentioned that. So this is in your data book. It's given to you, but it's kind of misleading. It makes it look like these were all about the same size, right? That the Cenozoic was about a quarter of the Earth's history and each one was about a quarter. As we already saw, right? 4 billion years for the Precambrian, 90% of Earth's history, right? These are only a few tens of millions of years. So this should be, if it was more to scale, I just wanted to show you one that kind of did it a little bit more accurately. It's just from Wikipedia, but right, take a look at this one. This is more of a realistic look at the entire history of the Earth, right? Notice, okay, Cambrian explosion is here. So if this is today, right up here at the top, and this is when the Earth first formed, way back here, okay, there is the Cambrian explosion. So up until this point, if there was life at all on Earth, it was very simple. Almost all of it was single-celled. If it was multicellular, it was barely even that. It was really just more than one single-celled organism starting to kind of work together. Okay, everything you and I would kind of recognize as an animal or a plant or a fungus, an insect, any of that stuff appears here. Okay, anything you and me would really recognize as life doesn't come into here. If this is today, right? Look at these primates, right? Those are the earliest apes. That's just a sliver. Realistically, this isn't quite to scale. That should be honestly even a smaller sliver. Okay. All of this kind of light blue, all these different shades of blue here represent the Precambrian, including this part, right? We don't even get water till here. So just don't get fooled by the one in your data book that makes it look like they're all even, right? This is all Precambrian, where we have very simple life, if we have life at all. It can be hard to appreciate the time scales here, okay? Because what's a million years? Well, that's already way bigger than we can think about, let alone 65 million years, let alone 185 million years, let alone 4 billion years, right? It's hard to appreciate how truly long these times are. Okay, so I'm going to take this whole Earth's history, okay, and we're going to break it down to just 1 year. So let's squeeze these 4.5 billion years into 1 year. What would that year look like? Okay, so again, we're taking that 4.5 billion years and we're going to squeeze it way, way, way down. We're going to make it 1 year just so we can kind of see, okay, what do these numbers actually kind of mean? So if we're squeezing the Earth's history into 1 year, well, that means on January 1st, Earth is born, right? A pile of rocks and dust and iron mainly collects kind of and forms into a ball because of gravity around the sun, right? And we get the Earth born. Now, it will be a full 2 months until life even appears, right? So if on January 1st, Earth is born, then on February 25th, that would be the first time we would have seen life appear. Now, remember, that's actually a billion years passing by, right? Now, on March 28th, okay, so we're already almost a quarter of the way into this whole Earth's history, photosynthesis starts happening for the first time. Remember, what's that going to lead to? That's going to lead to the Cambrian explosion, right? Because photosynthesis is going to produce enough oxygen that more complex life is going to be able to start evolving, okay? But it still takes a while, right? Look, halfway through the year, well, more than half, June would be halfway through the year. We're now already into August. August 16th is when the first multicellular organisms appear. Multicellular. So before this, everything living on Earth had cell. One cell, right? That's like a bacteria has one cell. Okay. And so we have the first multicellular organisms appear on August 16th. Takes till September 17th for things to start reproducing sexually. So that's by basically just by not cloning themselves. Okay. Look at this, right? In November, we're finally starting to see some of the stuff you and I would actually recognize as life. November, we're almost at the end of the year. We're almost at the end of the Earth's history. So November 15th, that's when fungi first appear. That's mushrooms. November 20th until the first fish, right? No plants are even on land until November 22nd. Remember, December 31st of this year is where we are today, right? You only have to go back to November for fish to start appearing. Okay, the end of November at that. Okay, December, the last month of our Earth's history, if the Earth is squeezed down into 1 year, right? On the 2nd, that's where frogs, amphibians. On the 6th, reptiles, right? The mammals. So just 2 weeks ago from where we are, that's where mammals first appear, right? And we get all the mammals we have now, all the primates, all the rodents, all the dogs, all the whales, all of those. 2 weeks ago, there was none of them if the Earth was 1 year old, okay? The 18th, we get our birds. The 20th, we get flowers for the first time. Look at this. We think of dinosaurs as being extinct such a long time ago, and they are, don't get me wrong. 65 million years ago was a long time ago, okay? But look at this in the grand scheme of things. In the entire history of the Earth, if the Earth was 1 year and today we are sitting at New Year's, right? Well, then when did the dinosaurs go extinct? They went extinct on Christmas, Okay, the dinosaurs were not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. 65 million years is a long time, but not compared to the entire Earth's history, right? Now, before anything interesting happens, we're going to have to go into the 31st. So the last day of this year, okay, if the Earth was 1 year old, look at that. At 11:30 a.m., hominids start to walk. That's not humans. That's our ancestors, right? They finally start to walk at 11:30 a.m. on the last day of this Earth's history expressed as 1 year, right? When do humans actually appear? Look at that. Homo sapiens, those are humans. 11:36 p.m. So 24 minutes before midnight, before the end of this Earth year, this Earth's history as a year, that's when the very first humans appear. So all of human history, every war, everything you can possibly imagine fits into the last 24 minutes of this year, if the year were the Earth's history, right? With 1 minute left to go till midnight, we invent agriculture, right? The agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, you probably learned about in social class, that would have happened 2 seconds ago, okay? If the Earth's history was squeezed down to 1 year. So what's the moral of the story? We are brand new, right? We have not been around very long. Even dinosaurs, we go back to dinosaurs, they're brand new, essentially, in the grand scheme of things, right? Earth's history is long, okay? And it's, I wouldn't say boring, but there's not much life going on for a very long time, right? There's not life as we recognize it now going on for an even longer time. And so just to drive it home, we're going to take that 1 year now and we're going to compress it down even further into 1 day, just to show you kind of another perspective on it.
Life. With an estimated 3.8 billion years of existence and evolution on Earth, it's an odd thing indeed. So how did we get here? And what would the Earth's 4.5 billion year timeline look like compressed into a normal day of 24 hours? The story begins early in the morning, around 4 a.m., with the rise of the first simple, single-celled organisms. However, these organisms are destined to spend quite some time alone. At 1 p.m., a simple cell engulfs another, creating a symbiotic relationship and the first eukaryotic cells, or cells with internal organs. At 6:30 p.m., these cells begin to form colonies, and thus the first multicellular life develops. But it isn't until 8:30 p.m. that sea plants appear, and 20 minutes later we suddenly see animal life erupt in an explosion of inventiveness. Jellyfish, the first true vertebrates, trilobites. Incredible diversification begins to take place, and just before 10 p.m., plants begin to appear on land, followed by land mammals. By 1024, the Earth is covered in carboniferous forest, and the first winged insects appear. Many reptiles dominate the land with less than an hour left, but a mass extinction event allows dinosaurs to storm the scene and remain until 11:41 p.m. when they too suddenly vanish. And so begins the age of mammals. In the last few minutes, apes split from the old world monkeys, and with only 1 minute and 17 seconds left before midnight, humans emerge. All of the recorded human history fits within a few seconds, an individual life lasting barely an instant. All a culmination of 3.8 billion years of life.
So again, moral of the story, the Earth is old. Okay, we have not been around very long. And so this is going to present one of the big challenges in geology is how do we study something that is so old and that we haven't even been around for that long? And even if we have been around that long, we haven't been writing stuff down and doing science for that and doing proper science for that long, right? Okay, I'm just going to close out by bringing these back up. If you want to pause the video, you can take a look. Do you know how to answer these after watching or after going through the notes? Always a good way to just check in with yourself. Okay, so that wraps up topic 1 about the history of the Earth and geological eras. If you're looking for practice, check the Google Classroom or the agenda for which kind of questions go with this topic.